Do you want to build a snowman? We sure do. So let's do it together today on this episode of Make It Monday. Hi everyone, I'm Jessica with JC Creative, and if this is your first time here, I would like to welcome you. If you love DIY projects, anything from tumblers to teas, we have a little bit of everything for everyone. And I would encourage you to subscribe to my channel below and be sure to ring the little bell to be notified of new tutorials I post each and every Monday. Okay. Welcome to this episode of Make It Monday. Today we're going to work on a snowman tumbler. We're going to use some acrylic paint and glitter to create kind of a snow texture in the background. And then we're going to use one of our water slide designs to for the snowman and for our main verse. So get your supplies together and let's get started. Okay guys, so for supplies for today's tutorial, I am using a 22 ounce fatty tumbler from Hog. And then you'll need your water slide decals that we're going to be using. And these are on the website. And we're going to be using our fabulous frosty glitter, some white acrylic paint, and a little makeup sponge is what we're going to be using. So our first step is we're going to try to make some texture with our acrylic paint, add some of our white glitter to emulate snow. Then we will epoxy that, get it nice and smooth. We will add on our water slide decals, top coat that bad boy, and then it'll be looking great. So we're going to start with our paint and our glitter. So I'm going to move this stuff out of the way and we'll get going. Okay, so first step is going to be, we're going to add some rough paint to this and sprinkle glitter on it while it's wet. So I have our glitter here that we're going to be using. It's a pretty white here. I'm going to go ahead and pour some in a medicine cup because I think it's easier to work with. I have more control in a cup than a bag. I'm just going to sit my bag aside. So I got that. I have these little mats I use. I get them from the Dollar Tree. So I'm honestly just going to put my paint right on this little plastic mat. It's acrylic paint's water soluble, it's washable. So I'm just going to put some paint there. I am going to turn on my turner. Actually, I'm going to paint here so I can put my piece of paper to catch my glitter. I am going to catch my glitter so I can put it back in my cup. So let's just do that. Got our little paint down here. All right, let's go. So I'm going to take my little, I can't see it. I can, I guess. So I'm just going to take my little paint tray. I'm going to get my sponge wet. And I'm going to roughly paint acrylic paint on here. I'm not going for a smooth texture. I want it to look a little rough. All right, now acrylic paint dries pretty quick, so I'm just gonna do a couple inches here at the top. And then I'm gonna sprinkle some glitter. And then I'll add more paint, add more glitter, add more paint, add more glitter, that kind of, till we get this whole cup kind of painted. But I'm okay with I'm not going for a smooth glitter look like I would on a lot of my other cups. I'm okay with it being thicker. Even going back in here where I have some glitter already and brushing some paint. I want it to look like frosty snow. I do want it all covered, but I'm okay if it's not perfectly even and some of the spots are a little thicker than others or look a little chunky. And I'm just alternating paint and glitter. You see how we have a little bit of texture in there? I want it to look like thick snow. I don't particularly want it to look all perfect. Acrylic paint dries pretty quick. You gotta kind of move pretty fast. Just gonna get some more glitter out of the bag. So you kind of get the idea of what I'm going for here. Now I'll just keep working it till I have the kind of rough snow texture I'm looking for here. And if I see spots where I missed, I just go back in. Where it looks too smooth, I'll just add a little more, rough it up a little bit. Now you might like this smooth look, so just do, if you want a smooth look, then you would just glitter your cup white like normal and go about your day. But I want it to look, have a little bit of texture to it. Stop this a minute because I'm going to try to maybe even put a couple like thicker spots that almost look like snow mounds here. I'm just kind of doing like a half circle, thicken it up. It might start to look like snow, you know, little snow piles. Now doing this means we will have to put on thicker epoxy to smooth it up, but it'll, I don't know, I think it just gives it a cool effect. You see how there's like down in here, now we got some little snow mounds going on at the bottom. I can just take a little cup and even scoop it off my plate here. cup in the paint. So now I think it looks pretty snowy. So see how it's like thick and not completely smooth. So I'm gonna let this dry. I want to put a clear coat on it. I'm gonna clear and seal it in. I'm gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna come back and we are gonna epoxy. Oh, you know what? I forgot the bottom. Look at me. So I take that back. I'm going to finish the bottom of the cup first, and then I'm going to let it dry, and then we will come back, add some epoxy, and then we will get our snowman decorations on there. So just a little different technique. You don't see lots of people do, but it will, I don't know, I think it just gives it a layer of depth when you get your water slides and stuff on there. So I'm gonna let this dry, clear coat it, and we will come back to do some epoxy. Okay, so we've let this thing dry. I've let it dry overnight. So now we got to add some epoxy. I am going to fast forward through that part, but just there's plenty of videos on there where I go through step by step on how I do the epoxy. But just a quick rundown, I use 2 parts A and B Pro Marine epoxy. I do equal parts A and B. I warm up part A, I add in part B, I circle till clear, and then I'm ready to put it on my cup. So I'm actually going to fast forward that whole mixing part of it, and then I'll come back and we'll be ready to put it on the cup. Okay, so I have my epoxy all mixed up. I'm ready to put it on my cup. I made a bigger batch because I do have several cups behind us that I need to get some epoxy on, so if I have extra. When I'm covering a glitter layer though, honestly, I use a lot of epoxy. I don't want to have to sand, so I will do some pretty thick coats. So my first step is I put on a really thin layer. This is like my base coat. It's like I'm priming the cup. So I put on a thin layer first, and then I'll come back in and I'll pour on some more after I've made sure everything is covered. And I'm just hoping we don't lose a lot of that texture under this epoxy if it still kind of shows through. I did clear coat this cup after, our last video. I actually put 2 coats of clear on it to seal in that glitter. And you can see where it's shiny or not shiny, and that's how you know if you've gotten it on all of the surface. All right, so what I do before I pour on my next coat, I do hit this with my torch. It's hard to see any bubbles on a white surface, but they're there. So I just hit it with my torch real quick. Make sure I'm getting any bubbles popped in this very first layer. Then I'm going to come back in with my cup, and I'm going to try to do thin streams here. And I'm just going to flood epoxy on this thing. And I'm doing thin streams because it gives the epoxy a chance before it turns to the other side to have spread out enough where it's not dripping off the cup. Because any epoxy that hits the ground is just wasted, so. As you can see, there's nothing coming off the cup on the bottom, like as it turns around. And honestly, I have no idea how much epoxy I'm using here. I'm just eyeballing it until the surface looks right to me. So I want a smooth surface for my water slide that's going to come next. So I don't want any rough spots. And you can see by the reflection on where you have rough spots and where you need some more epoxy. But the epoxy is self-leveling, so it's doing its job. It's just getting on there, it's leveling out. I'm going to get a little bit more on the bottom. On glitter layers, it soaks up a lot of epoxy, in my opinion. So what I do is I kind of look at like the bridge line up here where the light's hitting it as it goes around to see how smooth it looks. If I think there's high spots or low spots. I don't have to play, you don't have to play with it a lot. Oh, that was too much, but. You see, now it's dripping off the bottom because that one little drip I did was too much. There we go. So I'm going to let this turn for like 10 minutes or so. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to hit it with my torch. I even hit it with my torch now. But 10 minutes, it'll be pretty level. I'll pop any bubbles. And then I'm just going to let it turn for the next 8-10 hours or so. Get it nice and dry, and then we will add our Snowman water slide and be ready for our next steps. So I'll be back in a bit. Okay, so we are back, and I had a problem. So apparently my electric went off in my studio and I didn't know it. So I ended up with like a really nasty lump on my cup. It was really bad. So I didn't film it, but what I do is I do sand that down. And normally when you have a really big thing to get off of a cup, whether it stopped turning, whatever it was, Sometimes you end up with like these big ridges, or maybe it fell off the turner and you got a bunch of stuff. This is my go-to little savior. So this is a little drill master. These are like $15 on Amazon. I have a link to them in the supplies. They come with sanding tips and buffing tips. So I use that to sand down. I do wet sand, so I do it over a sink. It keeps the dust down. I wet sand that, and then I buff it. I try to get it as smooth as possible. To salvage a cup, I don't like to strip cups. Honestly, I've never ever stripped a cup. Either I turn it into something else, or I sand it, I fix it. I have one cup sitting that I'm not sure what I'm going to do with in all the years I've been doing this, but I've never had to strip a cup. Knock on wood. So I've got this sanded, and it really is this lower portion that is now dull. So we are going to put waterslide on this. And I didn't want to have to put a whole nother coat of epoxy on here before I waterslide. But the thing is, if you put waterslide over dull epoxy, it will never shine up. It's not like when you sand and you put the epoxy on it, it shines back up. If you cover anything dull or sanded in waterslide, expect to that section to always be dull. So if you didn't know that, I learned the hard way when I first started doing tumblers. I sanded something, I put waterslide on top of it, thinking that I guess that the moisture would just make it pop like epoxy does. It doesn't work that way. So I'm going to try to avoid this lower section with my waterslides. So I've taken our full sheet of waterslide here, and I've cut out Mr. Snowman, and I've gotten rid of all the extra waterslide I possibly can. And he is going to fit right in here, and I should avoid all of that dull epoxy. So it's actually probably going to work out pretty perfect. So he's going to go on the front. My verse is going to go on the back, and then I just have some random little snowflakes I'm going to put on around the cup. So I have this dull section, which is now going to be my front, to put my Mr. Snowman on. So I have a container of kind of tepid water. It's not cold, it's not hot. It's kind of like room temperature, I guess, if your room's 78 degrees or so. So I'm going to soak my little guy in here. And this is like a 13 by 19, I think, cupcake pan that I use to put on water slides with. Big water slides. Little ones, I got a little container, but my big ones, I use this. So I am going to just get some water on here while this little guy's getting ready. I do have links to the paper that I use on the supply list on my website. That link can be found in the description of this video and all the other videos. If you go there, you can see there's a little section I've put together of all my favorite supplies. So I've got the water slide I use there, the clear coat I use there. I even think I got the white paint I use there. The turners are there, my epoxy's there, everything that I use is there. And then everything else, like if it's my designs, those are on the website too. So when you do water slide, I just take and I slide it off the paper just a little bit. So you see there's just a little edge there, and that's all I want to touch my cup is that little edge. And I'm going to kind of hold that down, and I'm going to slide my graphic off of the paper. And then I'm going to start working that on there. And I'm going to keep it wet while I do that. I use a handy dandy baby wipe. I wet down my baby wipe, and I use that to start smoothing out whatever graphic I'm laying. Now, if by chance I get it on where that dull is, it won't slide very well. I'm just going to move his little arm here. Scoot him down just a little bit. So right now I'm completely above where I have it sanded, and that's where I want to be. So I'm going to try to keep him kind of in this location. I don't want his hat cut off though, so sometimes you just gotta make things work. Things don't always go as planned. You know, you learn as you go. You try different things, see what happens. So I'm going to smooth him out and keep working on him here. And then I'll turn on my turner here. I'll get it rotated around. And then I will do the back side here. I'm going to let it turn around till he comes back on the front to make sure I got that back side arm good. And I don't, so there's a little crink there. I couldn't really see it from the angle we were at, so I'm just gonna kind of stop it once that gets to the top a little bit so I can make sure that's all smoothed out. Make sure he's good. I just wring out my baby wipe a little bit so I can, because what you want to do is get the water out from underneath your water slide. You want to clear that water out from underneath there so the graphic is smooth. You don't want to leave any water there. You don't want to leave any wrinkles. I want that smooth on our cup. Okay, so he's looking pretty good. So I'm going to turn it back on. I'm going to kind of take note that here's where his buttons are. So I put my thumb, because I want my verse right here on the opposite side of that. So I'm going to wet that down a little bit. I'm going to get my verse in here. Let that soak. Make sure this is nice and wet. Make sure this is wet before we put it on here. I'm not quite ready yet. And you see that I'm able to I manhandle my water slides, and that is because I put a lot of clear coat on top of them. 3 to 4 coats pretty much is what I put on them. Alright, so I'm gonna kind of center that up and down in there. Then I'm going to start smoothing him out. And I do smooth from the center normally out to the edges. Make sure I get all that water out of there. And once I get it where I think it's pretty good laid down, I wring out my cloth and then I go back in, try to smooth out some more water. That's what I want. I don't want any water on here. Underneath that water slide, I want it all that water out. Alright, so let's turn this baby around and see what we got here. Make sure everybody stayed where they belong. Oh my goodness, if you hear my kids screaming, I'm so sorry, but it is bedtime and I hear them up there supposed to be getting ready for bed, but it sounds like a herd of elephants down here. My studio is in the basement, so between them and the dogs, it can be quite loud. I'm trying to hurry up so I can go upstairs and do our nighttime routine here, because it is a school day tomorrow. Okay. There we go. He's looking pretty good. Let's get the excess water out of my rag. As it turns, I see, I'll see more spots where I didn't get all the water out, so I go back in, and always with a damp cloth though. This cup, this is not dry, it's damp. So it will slide cleanly across the graphic without scraping it or anything like that. It's the best thing I have found to smooth water slides. And I use baby wipes for everything anyway, so just something that's in my arsenal. There we go. Okay, so Mr. Snowman is on here. I don't really see many more spots. So I'm gonna let him dry fully, and then we are gonna come back and epoxy him. Hopefully all that place where I had to sand all that nasty lumpness will sparkle back up, and he will be almost ready for his forever home. So we'll be back in a little bit. Psych, I lied. I forgot to put on my snowflakes. All right, so I'm gonna throw all these snowflakes in my little water thing, and I'm just gonna go and kind of put them around the cup. Miscellaneous spots where I think could use a little extra. I can't believe I forgot to put them on. Sitting there yapping, trying to get upstairs for these kiddos. Alright, so this one's ready. I'm going to put this one kind of here. And there. And there. These go on pretty quick. Oh, that one slid off the paper before I could get it there. There we go. Let's see what I got. Two more. One in there. And this graphic will come with the full sheet, which will have all of the words. It'll have the snowman, and then it'll have these miscellaneous snowflakes. I got one more. Slide you over a little bit. Slide you a little bit. Here I'm going to put this guy. Decisions. Let's move you up and you kind of over, and I don't even know. Maybe I don't need him. Maybe I printed too many snowflakes. I'll move you up and I'll put you down in here. How about that? Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to go in. I'm not going to really rub these because they're so small. I'm just going to kind of pat over them a little bit. Just make sure to get some of that excess water off. Make sure they're flat. I'm just going to dab them. So I try to rub them. They'll slide. They'll just move because there's not much surface area that they're grabbing to because they're so small. There we go. Now we got snowflakes. Okay, so we'll try this again. Now let's let Mr. Snowman and his snowflakes dry, and we will be back to do some epoxy. So now we'll see in a few. Okay, so let's epoxy Mr. Snowman. And I'm going to use my A and B Pro Marine. I am going to pour in my part A. I'm going to warm it up. Then I'm going to mix in my part B, and I do that for consistency to get the thick A a little thinner so it mixes better with the B. And then I'm going to stir until clear, and then we are going to put on our cup. So I am going to actually fast forward the mixing because you guys have probably seen this in all the other videos. But I am going to show you how I put it on a cup when I'm done with that. So I'm going to fast forward this, and we will be back to put it on the cup. Okay, so I have my mixed up epoxy here, and I made a big cup because I have some cups behind me I'm going to epoxy as well. But I measured out about, I don't know, that's probably about 25 milliliters of the epoxy. Step one, I put a thin layer on. So I'm not going to pour all this on. I put a thin layer of epoxy on. This is what I call, like, I'm priming my cup. So I get everything covered, everything wet. And then I go back in and I will pour my remaining epoxy on. Don't forget the bottom. Okay, so now I have my cup primed. I am going to torch it to get the bubbles out of this first layer. It's a real thin layer. You can see some of the bubbles in there. And I want to make sure they are all gone before I pour on the next coat. Okay, now I am going to pour on in real thin streams some more epoxy. Some more on the bottom here. I normally don't do a lot of messing with my epoxy. I let it spin, I let it level out, let it do its thing, because it is self-leveling. So if I see some little lumps or humps, I might help it along a little bit. Right here, like I see a high spot. Might just help it. I'll let that turn. And I'm just letting the turner do its job. So I am gonna pop some more bubbles here, and I'll come back probably 10 to 15 minutes after I walk away, and I'll hit it with a torch again, because as the epoxy settles, the bubbles kind of come to the top. And so I will hit it again, make sure I got them all. And that's looking pretty good. I don't see any voids or any spots that don't have enough epoxy. It looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm gonna let this turn. I'm gonna let it turn 10-15 minutes. I'll come back with a torch. I'll hit it one more time while we're off camera, and then we'll come back, and we should have a finished cup. So we will be back in the morning and see how it turned out, and fingers crossed that the electric doesn't turn off. So we will be back in a little bit. So what do you think, guys? Do you like our little snowman? I think he turned out super cute. I can see this texture underneath our water slides. The verse is super cute as well. All the little snowflakes just added the perfect little accent to him. This design is on the website. You can download it as a printable for your water slides. All of the supplies, my favorite supplies, are on the website as well. Go to that link below, jump over there. I have a link to the water slide I use, the paint, everything that I use to make my tumblers are on there. All of your artwork is in the JC Creative section on the website as well. And if you're not part of our Facebook group, go ahead and join that too. So down below, you'll see a link to our Facebook group. Jump over there. I love to answer your questions. I love to see the pretty things you create, especially if you're following these tutorials. I love to see the things that come out of these lessons that we do each week. So next week there's not going to be a tutorial. Sorry guys, I am going to take off the Monday of the week of Thanksgiving. We are hosting here and I've got lots to do before Turkey Day, but I will be back the week after Thanksgiving, that Monday, ready for some new tutorials. But in between now and then, I am going to be dropping a whole bunch of new designs onto the website. So check in often. There'll be lots of printables on there, some SVG stuff, just trying to get all this stuff off my server onto the website for you guys. So check over that the next week. If you have any questions or need something, of course, reach out to me on our Facebook group. And until then, I will see you guys on the next episode.